How I dance. Like a dog. Raphael, can you do the BoJack? Now do the Princess Carolyn. Let's just do this for an hour.
Welcome, everybody. Now we'll get started. Come on in.
Tell me you love me.
Welcome everybody to Horsing Around with the BoJack Creators. Can everybody hear me? Awesome. I'm Shalori Jones from the First Year Experience Office. We're just happy to have everyone here. This is a collaboration between FYE and Geek Week. So we are closing out Geek Week with an amazing bang. So you have an opportunity today to be able to meet the creators of the animated Netflix series BoJack Horseman, y'all. This is the Common Experience Selection of the school year. The focus is on mental health, but really providing a raw portrayal of mental health, loneliness, and the power of reinventing oneself, as well as it being a dark comedy. Now, one thing that I want to share with you all is that every year the UCLA Common Experience program selects one title to read, listen, or watch together as a Bruin community with the involvement of committee members that are faculty, staff, as well as students like yourselves. And that title is chosen to be able to spark a dialogue around a common theme and to be able to inspire action. So no matter what the selection may be, every year, the Common Experience program chooses a title that we can be able to have critical conversations that are rooted in social justice issues, and really being able to understand how this yearly theme can provoke those critical conversations. But it does not base its selection on endorsing the lives or the actions of any of the characters or protagonists of the chosen title. So participants are encouraged to make your own decisions about the topics discussed in the selection. And its purpose is really to have a common conversation with diverse perspectives so that the UCLA community can come together in a respectful way to learn from each other and to explore their role in creating a just society. So really excited for everyone to be here as I've shared. I want you to know how you can have some of the cool backgrounds that we have. You just go to tinyurl.com/BoJack backgrounds, and you can have any of the 12 backgrounds designed by the FYE team. And I will be able to drop that in the comments a little bit later for you. Next, if you're interested in the soundtrack is available, so you can screenshot that, or either go to tinyurl.com/BoJack music there, and then you'll also have access to the soundtrack. Next, I really want to, without further ado, introduce our moderators. So our moderators will be Marika Turner, who is the Health and Wellbeing Coordinator for Res Life, as well as works with RISE and is a co-chair of the UCLA Sexual Health Coalition. She's an avid watcher and champion hero of all things BoJack on our campus. And then Ryan, oh my gosh, Ryan is the events coordinator for the Bruin Film Society and will be our other moderator, and they'll be working together to be able to ask questions. You will be able to ask questions at the end. We'll be choosing 5 folks to ask questions, and you will drop those questions in the Q&A box, not the chat, but in the Q&A box. If for any reason you feel distressed or overwhelmed, please reach out to me in the Q&A box. You can reach out to me directly, Shalori, and I'll connect you with one of our therapists that's also available. But I will allow Marika and Ryan to take it away.
Thank you so much, Shalori. I first want to say thank you to the Geek Week and FYE team for putting this on. Thank you for Raphael and Lisa for being here with us today. So I'm going to introduce Lisa Hanawalt. She is the production designer / producer of BoJack Horseman and the creator of Tuca and Birdie. New episodes coming to Adult Swim in 2021. Woo! She grew up in Palo Alto, California, and graduated from UCLA in 2006. She also
Go Bruins.
Yes, go Bruins. She also co-hosts a podcast called Baby Geniuses with comedian Emily Heller, and her latest book, I Want You, was released by Drawn and Quarterly in August 2020.
And of course, my name is Ryan, and I wanted to introduce Raphael Bob Waxberg, creator and showrunner of BoJack Horseman. Raphael is the creator and showrunner of the show. He also co-created Undone with Kate Purdy, that's on Amazon Prime, and executive produces Lisa Hanawalt's Tuca and Birdie. His book of short stories, Someone Who Will Love You in All Your Damaged Glory, can be found wherever books tend to congregate. Lisa and Raphael, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Here we are. We made it.
Hello.
We did it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being with us today. It means so much to us and our students. You'll be able to talk with us about all of these themes. And I guess just to kick off the questions, I wanted to ask, what inspired you to tell this story? What inspired you to make BoJack?
Well, I mean, really, honestly, the first inspiration for the show was me wanting to work with my friend Lisa Hannawalt.
Me?
Yeah, surprise!
Oh, wow.
What if this was the first you heard of your involvement on BoJack Horseman or your friendship with me? Lisa and I went to high school together, and we've been friends for a long time. And I found that in most of my creative pursuits, the ones that are most fulfilling and enjoyable and creatively successful are ones in which I get to collaborate with other talents that I admire, and also just on a personal level, people that I adore. Another way to read that is that I am not that talented, and I love to latch on to other geniuses. So that
Yeah, right. Nobody's convinced by this.
So I may use their talents to sneak.
We've read your book.
success.
You're talented. He's extremely talented.
So Lisa, I would like to know, from your perspective, when did you first start drawing these animal people? Because that was the beginning of the inspiration of BoJack, was looking at Lisa's animal portraiture and thinking, what are these guys thinking about?
Well, I first started drawing animal people when I was 5 years old. I recently looked at some old comics I made when I was like 7, and it was like a horse guy wearing a patterned sweater. So
wow,
I really haven't changed my shtick in 30 years. But yeah, I was drawing a bunch of animal people, and I was like trading pet portraits for money and beer. And I was
not
barely,
when you were 7.
No, no, it was a little later. I was legal. And I was just starting to like dip my toes into illustration and comics. And you were just like, oh, can I use one of your horse guy drawings? Because I'd drawn this like horse guy, like wearing a shirt and like leaning against a wall and wearing jeans. And yeah, he looked like a main character, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like it's important to note in this story that Lisa and I were friends for a while, and we had collaborated on stuff in the past, because the first email,
yeah, we did a whole webcomic for a while.
But if you just read the first email I sent you out of context, it's very aggressive. Like, hey Lisa, I'm going to take some of your animal people, I'm going to pitch a show, hope you like it.
Yeah, no, we already had like
cold calling talented artists and informing them that you want to use their talents to make a TV show.
No, we've like had like established years of like bantering back and forth about my drawings and your writing, and so it was like an established rapport. So it wasn't totally out of the blue, and I was just like, yeah, sure. And you were like, yeah, I already showed them in a meeting.
I did it.
Like, oh,
there's no getting out now. But I think
Great.
what I really loved about Lisa's art is there was somehow simultaneously this kind of like very cartoony, childlike fantasy element to it, of wonder, but also these like very rich, detailed patterns that suggested something a little more sophisticated and adult. And even like the eyes, I felt were so like not even human, like animal, like in the way that like you look at an animal's eyes and you're like, what's going on in there? Like I felt like the faces were so opaque and animalistic, while at the same time being very expressive and emotional. And that kind of dichotomy of kind of like the fanciful and cartoony, and also the kind of emotional and introspective, really was the layout of the show for me. Is can I capture both of those feelings with my writing as well?
This is great. This is great to hear. I feel like so many people in the chat are like, we got to see that webcomic. And it's just interesting.
It's not online anymore.
Oh no.
I mean, there are remnants of it you can find on the internet. Also, but if you buy our book about the show, the BoJack Horseman, The Art Before the Horse, you can read a few sample strips from that old webcomic that we made together. It's in there.
Yes, I'm definitely checking that out. So the next question we have is, what made you choose the various themes throughout the seasons, and how did you approach the transition to more serious themes throughout the later seasons?
I don't know. Do you know, Lisa?
Wait, what was the question again?
Okay, how do we choose the themes, and how do we approach the transition to more serious themes? Well, the show is always going to get more serious. I mean, that was the pitch of the first season, was, you know, we're gonna present this thing like it is a fun, wacky cartoon, and then gradually over the course of the first season, it's going to reveal itself to be something much more serious. And part of the way we did that was, unlike a lot of other adult cartoons at the time, things didn't snap back to status quo at the end of every episode. And so, you know, I remember early on, we had a conversation, me and Lisa and Mike Hollingsworth, our supervising director, and a bunch of the animators and designers. And, you know, they kind of asked, like, okay, like, there's a big party in this episode. In the next episode, should everything be cleaned up? And I said, no. Let's assume, unless we say otherwise, that the damage to the house from the party remains. And that
I love that you do that. I love your how you stick to just lasting damage throughout the season. Like, you love to like have a perfect set and then just fuck it up and like, have it stay that way. And it's hard for animation because we have to track the changes that happen over the course and be like, oh, actually, no, that mirror should be broken. It was broken in the last episode. Like, and it creates all these problems for production, but I think it's so wonderful.
Yeah, and it's also, it's a fun kind of Where's Waldo as you watch the season, to go like, oh, in the background, someone's like breaking that window. That's how that window got broken. Because you're not really paying attention. Just gradually start realizing, like, wait a second, this place is a dump.
But I think it reflects the story in such a nice way, because there's lasting damage to the artwork and to the backgrounds. And it's like, there's consequences to these characters' actions.
That's what I was getting at. Is like, I think that for me started, I don't remember if it started as an aesthetic choice and then tied into the philosophy of the show, or if that was the philosophy of the show already, but it feels like a nice symbol for like what happens with the characters too. That like, if they get in a big fight, they're not just going to forget about it by the next episode. Like, that those relationships are changed, they're damaged. And that was just something we were thinking about for the arc of the first season. But then as you build from there, that stuff accumulates even more. And so it was always going to get more dramatic, because but because the world is like so cartoony and wild, like really wild stuff can happen. But then it's like, okay, let's examine that. What would be the realistic fallout from this very cartoony thing that would never realistically happen in the real world? How would actual characters process this thing, and how would they try to move forward? And then I think by nature of that, things got even more dramatic from season to season.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the subject, you talked a little bit about like the visual symbolism of stuff like the broken mirrors, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. Wanted to ask, why is each character like a specific animal? Like, why are certain characters dogs or cats or horses or humans? Is there sort of a meaning or symbolism to that? I love it. I love
Why
it.
are they like
Oh my
this?
God, Princess Carolyn. I love her so much.
Why do we make these decisions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know why we do that, Lisa?
I mean, you decided, you mapped out what the characters were.
The main characters, the first five.
The main characters. Yeah. I think later there were some questions like, okay, this director could be, you know, Quentin Tarantino or Quentin Tarantino or Quentin Tarantucan. You let me have more decisions. And then sometimes it'd be an extra that's just like, I don't know, this guy's like a duck or whatever, you decide. But like generally you tried to have a balance where it was like 2/3 humans, 1/3 animals. Is that the general?
I think we tried to do half and half, but gradually we settled for 2/3, 1/3. There's always more fun.
Well,
for
the
you
animals
guys.
are the animals are so eye-catching that they're,
Right.
you know, if you have half and half, it's like where your eye first goes.
Right. I think
So
it was more fun for you guys to design the animals, and then also for us as writers, it was always like, oh, we can always go to a joke if we know this one's a platypus or something.
yeah,
You know, like that's just a good. You know, it's funny is that if you look at some of our human characters, in some ways they're a little sillier than the animal characters because they don't have the animal characteristic to fall back on. So, like for example, the character of Judah is like,
oh my God.
he's like this, so we know what he is, because otherwise he would just be a human. He can't just be a human, so we have to really like push like what his gags are, what his character is.
Yeah, top bun was really important to Judah's character.
Exactly.
Such a hottie, that Judah. I don't know. Yeah, why is BoJack a horse? I think there's so much you can project onto a horse face. Like I feel like, I don't know, just as someone who likes horses, I think they carry a lot of emotion and angst inside. But I don't know. You're not a horse guy, so why did you choose a horse?
Well, I mean, part of it is you were drawing a lot of horses, so I was like,
yes,
looking at your drawings, and that's where BoJack came from. But also, I do think specifically, if you look at like the main three animals, which is BoJack, Princess Carolyn, and Mr. Peanut Butter, they are all, I mean, BoJack a little less, but they're like domesticated animals. Like they're animals
iconic.
that like, people would have, that would live in a city.
The top animals for people generally,
right?
People really
like they're not jungle
street.
Animals. They're not, and then we eventually had jungle animals and sea animals and all kinds of other wild animals. But I feel like in America, who would be the animals that would like live in a city?
Yeah,
and it would be like a horse and a cat and a dog.
Yeah. You also have that kind of sport background to like BoJack, like the fact that he idolized Secretariat and stuff is
Right.
like such a horsey thing. Couldn't have been any other animal.
Couldn't have been.
Couldn't have been. BoJack is the modern Black Beauty.
Yeah, I really appreciate this perspective. It makes me think about, you know, Mr. Peanut Butter and his dogness and his happiness, and then thinking about the Face of Depression episode and like the way he's viewed as this happy dog, but then all these other levels. So I think like that really touched me as far as like relating what the animals are and their personalities. Yeah, sad dog. So, but yeah.
Sad dog.
Yeah. So my next question is for Raphael specifically. So
We'll see if I can't turn it around to Lisa. Well, that'll be a fun challenge. Let's see.
I would be interested too. So you spoke publicly about having experiences with ADHD. How do you think this experience may have influenced your writing of the show, if at all?
That's a great question. Lisa, what do you think about that?
I was thinking of getting tested.
Yeah. I mean, I suspect ADHD is so much a part of who I am. You know, people have also asked me about my Jewish identity, and like, do you think BoJack is a Jewish show, or how do you view BoJack through the eyes of Jewish humor? And I think my answer to both questions is kind of the same. It's like, that's just me. Like, I can't separate my ADHD from the rest of me. And so there are definitely characteristics of BoJack or Todd, or really all five of the characters, maybe not so much Princess Carolyn, but the other four, that, you know, fans might point to and be like, oh, this character has ADHD. And to me, that's just like, I'm just writing the normal people. I'm just writing like, yeah, who wants to write a book when there's you know, when you can distract yourself with other things. So I mean, I think that's maybe for other people to observe and comment on the ADHD-ness of the show. But it is definitely, I mean, it's always been a part of my life. Lisa, do you think that's fair? You knew me when I was in high school.
There's a lot of people with ADD in show business, man. It's a lot of my favorite people have ADD. I think it's both a help and a, yeah, I mean, it helps with creative fields, I think, in some ways. But like you said, it's hard to separate like what parts of you are making what parts of the show, and like what parts of each character. Like you're kind of just, you're mushing so many things together.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. And I guess just one last question before we open it up to Q&A. What do you hope people will take away from BoJack? Like, now that you finish the show, what sort of lessons or what sort of ideas do you hope people will take away after they finish watching the show?
Lisa, do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I feel like there's a thoughtfulness that the show has towards difficult subject matter that I think has imprinted on the people who watch it. Like whenever you go at a topic, like, I don't know, like #MeToo or something, like you never hit it straight on. Even like gun rights. I feel like the episode where Diane like gets into shooting a gun, you came at it from such an interesting angle, and like it was surprising in so many ways. I think, I don't know what I want people to take away from that, but I think that thoughtfulness is inspiring to people. And
yeah, I'm really resistant to being prescriptive about it, because I think people take away all sorts of things from the show. I'm glad people take away something. Like that's, yes, good.
Yeah, don't just watch it and forget it.
I hope some of it sticks with you. But sometimes people really surprise me of like, oh, that conversation between BoJack and Diane really helped me understand what I was going through with my friend, and like I didn't understand it until I saw them have that conversation. Or like, oh, BoJack admitting that he needs help and him struggling with that made me realize that it was not a weakness to ask for help. But there's all sorts of things, and I think different parts will resonate with different people. Some of it intentional, and some of it very not intentional. Some of it is just like where you're at when you see the show and what you're thinking about, and it might cause you to think about something else. And by the end of it, you're not even sure how it relates to BoJack at all anymore. But if that was the seed that got you to where you need to be, then like I'm grateful for that as well.
Sometimes people take away what is, in my opinion, the wrong thing from the show, and you can't control it. They're like, got it, Diane's a bitch, and you're like, wait,
slow down,
hold on, go back here. But you can't control that. That's art.
I don't know. I do feel that the gnawing responsibility of maybe we could control that better.
Yeah,
I think that's
but there's only so much you can.
There's no end to that debate. I think it's just a conversation to continue having.
Yeah, I mean, I think about how like Elon Musk is like, I love Parasite, and you're like, okay, but
what did you think that movie was about?
Yeah, there's only so much you can do, but you're right, it is a big responsibility.
Like I remember this is like a fourth hand. Someone told me that they heard from somebody who heard from somebody who heard from somebody that
my friend's sister's cousin told me that.
Like, so I'm trying to think who I heard this from. It wasn't Will Arnett. I think it might have been someone who worked at Will Arnett's production company. Like someone was talking to Will Arnett, talking about Will Arnett. Will wasn't even there. And Harvey Weinstein was in the room, and he goes, "Oh, I love that show, BoJack Horseman." And this is obviously before Harvey Weinstein was in jail.
I hadn't
he was
heard
still
this.
invited to Hollywood parties, right? And
Wow.
when I heard about that,
sickening. That's sickening.
What does it mean that Harvey Weinstein, like what about my show appeals to Harvey Weinstein? And what does he think this show is saying to him? And that, I think you can, if you watch the show all the way through, you can see in the later seasons, there is some meta commentary about, what do we as creators expect audiences to take away from our work, and what is our responsibility as creators to make that clear without being didactic. And
That's
at a certain
it's such a sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You finished.
No, go ahead. Go, please.
I mean, it's such a weird feeling as an artist, like when I see someone on Twitter who's being very transphobic, and they have like their Twitter avatar is something I drew, and it's like a character from BoJack. I'm just like, what got lost in translation?
Yeah, every single time.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. And you can't really stop that from happening, but it's still upsetting. You can't control art completely.
We need to tighten up the copyright rules in this country. That's what we're getting at. We need to really be able to sue people and punish people taking our work and repurposing it.
You just hope that you're like, I hope most of the people with BoJack avatars are nice, empathetic. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for, I guess, our first part of our questions. I guess I'll start with a question from our audience. Let's see. So I think this question is really important, especially with, the common experience being centered around, mental health awareness. So what and how was the research about mental health for the show? Because it is so well portrayed without glorifying it. Very rare to see it in media.
That's a great question. What was the research like? That question makes me feel like I should have done a lot more research. I don't know. It's funny because like we were just saying, in a negative way, a lot of people put stuff on the show that wasn't necessarily supposed to be a part of the show. But I also meant it when I said in a positive way too, that people take away things that, like when I was making the show, I never meant for BoJack to be a treatise on mental health. That wasn't really what I was thinking about. Like I said, I was like, I'm just writing normal people. I'm just gonna write like
it's not like
you have feelings.
You didn't flip through like a DSM and say, okay, this character has this problem and this character has this issue. It kind of like unfolds as you write complex.
Yeah, I was just like trying to write realistic characters reacting to situations and writing what I thought was funny and interesting and hopefully somewhat relatable. And then when people really did kind of attach themselves and go, that's what I feel, that's what I'm feeling, then I started to feel the responsibility a little more of like, okay, well, let's be careful with this. But we were very, like, I never wanted to diagnose the characters specifically, because I liked that they were open to interpretation and that people who have different things can go, oh, that's kind of like what I do, and that's kind of like what I'm going through or what I saw my friend go through, and also that allowed me to skirt responsibility a little bit for being precise, because the other hand is if you diagnose something, then you have people going like, well, I'm that, and that's not what I'm like that's not, that's a stereotype, or that's a false portrayal because it's not me. And the truth is that all of these afflictions, depressions, what have you, manifest themselves differently in different people and in different combinations. So we did try to be responsible about it and not make too much of a joke out of things or dismiss the things. We wanted to be respectful of like, yeah, these are real things these characters are going through. They're not just lazy, they're not just stupid, they're not just sad for no reason. But we didn't do, I don't remember doing a lot of like, let's look up the specific symptoms of this thing. We
did track their astrological charts before we started working on the show. That was really important, and we figured out their Myers-Briggs.
Yeah. They each took a BuzzFeed quiz of which BoJack Horseman character are you, and that was like, we really kind of followed that of like,
which Disney
BoJack
princess
is a BoJack, Diane is a BoJack.
All right, great. And this next question focuses on a specific episode, the funeral episode, Free Churro. This is from Bryce Bush. And he wanted to ask you, what inspired you to write Free Churro, which has such a big focus on mental health?
Yeah, I understand the angle of these mental health questions, because I know that's a big part of the programming of this show. Is the common experience, and so I don't mean to dismiss that. Like, I never thought about that. That's not what this show's about. No, of course I'm happy that people have seen that in the show. It is definitely something that I care about. But that episode, a lot of my creativity or my storytelling comes from format first. Like, it is less about like, what story do I want to tell, and more about like, what would be a fun way to tell a story. And so, you know, we had this idea first of like, wouldn't it be fun? You know, we had an episode that had no dialogue in it, that was all visuals. And we thought, like, wouldn't it be fun to kind of do the opposite of that, to do an episode where the visuals are very straightforward, and all of the story comes from the dialogue? And then even more so, what if it wasn't dialogue? What if it was just a monologue? And,
which as an art director, I like felt attacked by personally, but no, I'm just kidding.
Well, I will. I mean, just to jump ahead to the process, I do think one of the reasons the episode really works is what Amy Winfrey did as the director, and she was like really thoughtful about where to place the camera and like how to visually tell this story in a very limited, with a very limited box of tools. And I mean, yeah, it's watching the episode is not like you're just listening to a podcast. Like it actually, the visuals do add a lot to it.
Yeah, they do.
But you know, at this point we were 5 seasons in, and we thought, you know, Will Arnett is an incredible actor. He could definitely carry an episode all by himself. And then also part of it is that around the same time I was writing this book. And so I was kind of like in the practice of writing these prolonged narratives with just one voice, kind of describing things and like talking, you know, not necessarily having to rely on the back and forth dialogue that most of my writing had been up to that point. So like, all right, let's write a monologue. And then it was like, okay, well, how do we justify that, right? Like, I don't want to just have like BoJack, you know, in a Jamba Juice, like, you know, monologuing for a half hour. Like, it's got to be, we need a story that's going to justify this. You know, something I talk about a lot is that I think content dictates form in writing and in different kinds of storytelling. And then I think a mistake a lot of people make early on, or at least I made early on, is you feel like that what that means is the content has to come first. That you come up with this great story and you come up with the best way to tell that story. And that's a great way to come up with stories, but also you can go the other way and be like, I came up with this cool trick I want to try. What's a story that's going to justify this, that's going to be emotionally satisfying to be told in this way? And so for me, it was like, all right, let's do this funeral episode, because that's a place for someone to give a speech.
That was such a great table read. It was so powerful. Just listening to Will, that
was amazing. Yeah.
I mean,
one of the highlights of working on the show, I think, was that table read and just having him come in and
Yeah, Free Churro for me was definitely like one of my favorite episodes. And then the ending is just it's so spot on with just, you know, the show in itself. So I appreciate that question and y'all's answers. My next question, because I'm getting a lot about like trying to break into the animation world, so I really want to touch on that. So this question is, what are the necessary things or skills you need to have when trying to break into the animation world?
As a show creator or as an animator or a writer? I think it's different.
Let's say both. What would you say from an art perspective? How do you break into the world? Because a lot of in animation, especially, a lot of show creators do come from that side. Like I came from like the writing side. Like I'd been writing live action stuff. I didn't really have a lot of animation experience. But there are a lot of like animated shows that are actually created by animators who work their way up through animation.
I really like seeing artists who kind of have their own like just path they're on. Like they're making zines, they're kind of making original characters. They're sort of world building on their own already, and it's clear they have like a clear vision. I love working with artists like that, sort of self-motivated. I think a lot of artists also can show how talented they are by doing fan art of previously existing characters. But I like it when people are kind of creating their own thing to like explore their own emotions and telling their own stories. Really, really love artists who do that. Like our current supervising director, Aaron Long, like he has a whole side animated project, Sublo and Tangy Mustard, that he works on whenever he's on hiatus or not, busy working on other things. And it's just cool. It's just like, I'm like, this guy is so creative and he's doing so much. And like, I want some of that for my thing, And then, I think, and then writing is like a very different skill. Like I don't necessarily hire writers who are artists. You know, I don't think that that's necessary, because it's like we have so many talented artists who can kind of take a script and pull it apart if needed and add, you know, weird visuals. Like I don't need writers to necessarily be able to do that.
But I would say, you know, on either side, whether you're, you know, interested in kind of doing the writer path or the animator path, I think, Lisa, what you're saying is right on, which is, you know, you don't wait for someone else's permission to make your thing. Like there's never been an easier time to like make your own stuff and get it out there. You know, like post it, tell your friends about it, try stuff out, put it on its feet. You know, if you don't want to do animation and you want to do live action stuff, you have a camera in your phone. You can like make some skits with your brother and sister just hanging out in your house or your friends down the street, you know, like
make TikToks, get on TikTok.
Absolutely.
Become popular on TikTok. That's the only way.
Not the only way.
But like that's
but do
no,
stuff,
I'm kidding. But
and you'll see what plays, see what gets popular, see where your voice does well, see what feels good to you, see what like, oh, this sounded really funny in my head, but then when I wrote it on this piece of paper and someone else said it, it wasn't funny at all.
It didn't work. Yeah.
It's not because they're wrong. It's because, oh, I got to figure out how to translate this better, or I got to like, you know, I got to keep working at it.
You'd been like writing a blog for so long before you ever worked in the industry. Like you were writing every day, and if nobody was asking you to, you just were doing it. Like, that's so
I mean,
important.
the worst thing that can happen, which I've actually seen happen to people, is people like figure out, and I imagine a big, well-connected school like UCLA could accidentally send you down this path, is where you get the industry connections and you get the mentorships, and then you get to be an assistant in a writer's room, and you get all these contacts and all these upper level people who are like excited to help you out, and they're like, can I see your script? And like, you don't have a script, you don't have anything to show for, you know, like you're not there, or you have a script, it's like not that good yet because you haven't been focusing on the work, you haven't been like doing it. And so I think the best way to like get successful is do it, and then this on top of that is do it publicly, do it and put it out there. And don't obsess in your room of like, it's not perfect, it's now, I'm still working on it, because you can like whittle something down into nothing. Like get it into it's like good enough, and then like push it out and like see how it does.
See what happens. And that's the main thing I've learned from even working in shows to begin with, is you have to make like a whole pile of work, and that's the raw clay. And then the finished product is going to be just something you've carved away from that pile, but you have to make the pile first. Like you can't make like a perfect sculpture right off the get-go. I'm mixing my metaphors, but make a pile.
Make your pile.
Some of it's half of it'll be shitty, but that's fine. That's part of the process, is to make shitty things and figure out why they're shitty.
I got plenty of shitty scripts in a drawer somewhere, so I can totally relate. And
perfect.
Yeah, our next question, we're getting some questions about Sarah Lynn. So I guess just to encompass all of them, what was your inspiration for writing that character? What was your inspiration for that character's sort of send-off? And like, why, what were the reasons that her story kind of evolved the way it did and continued to influence the show? Like, what was the inspiration and what was the sort of ideas behind that?
Oh, you know, Sarah Lynn, I mean, she was definitely one of the earliest ideas when we were working on the show. I mean, she was in all the original pitch documents, without being one of the main 5 characters. And I remember when I was developing it, I think at first I was thinking about like, okay, like Olsen twins, Lindsay Lohan, Britney Spears, kind of that era of thinking. And then as I was developing the show, I started to feel like, is this dated? Does this trope exist anymore? And then like right before we sold the show to Netflix, like Miley Cyrus put out her like Bangers album, which is like, I'm a sexy adult now. I was like, oh, this is evergreen, unfortunately. The cycle is continuing. And that was the inspiration. I don't remember much more than that. I mean, we obviously her end is heavily foreshadowed through every appearance she makes. So we always knew where we thought the story was going to go with her, and it just became a matter of when we wanted to play that card. I don't know. Do you remember the inspiration for her look, Lisa? Were you basing
It was a mishmash. I was looking at Miley for sure. I was looking at Lindsay. I was looking at Brittany. All the
there's a little Kristen Stewart in there too.
A little what? Oh, Kristen Stewart. Yes, there was a little bit. Different kind of star, but had the kind of look for the hair that I wanted. All the characters are like a mishmash of things that I've pulled different references. I never want to use a single reference for any person, any fictional character we're creating. I think that's not as interesting for it to be a one-to-one. Like this is literally, but some of them you can pick out from their faces, like who I've been basing it on. She was very fun to design. Very sad, but I love her funeral outfit. Especially, it's one of my favorite designs, where my idea for it was that she started getting dressed for the funeral and then forgot where she was going halfway through getting dressed. Just but yeah.
Thank you so much. This next question is again about a specific episode that I think a lot of people still think about, but stupid piece of shit, verbalized and visualized. Sorry.
Wow.
Oh my. Verbalize and visualize so much of what is hard to articulate about anxiety and depression. What type of writer-artist collaboration went into creating it, and other episodes where their synchronicity was so vital to portraying the message of the episode?
That's a great question. It's a great example too, because it is one that everybody added something to. And I think as I said at the beginning, one of the things I love about the show is that it is a collaboration. It started with this collaboration between me and Lisa, and it just gradually accumulated all these other people, these brilliant artists. And there's so many steps along the way where people get to add their own thing to it, right? So that script was written by Allison Taffel, and it really came out of the writer's room. There's a lot of bouncing around of like like I said, what are different forms of episodes that we could do? And I think the original idea actually was we wanted to do an episode from Judah's perspective. And so we were talking about like, what would that look like? How does Judah see the world? And how does, how would he go about? And then we're like, oh, what if that might be hard to maintain an episode, especially because most of our characters never even interact with Judah, regularly. So what if we broke it out and we had like different characters with different internal monologues, and we can kind of bounce from A story to B story to C story, but that's kind of the constant of the episode. And then when we landed on BoJack, it was like, well, hold on, this is really interesting. Like, let's keep talking. And we just like gradually that became more and more of the episode, where that became the whole thing. And I remember my main note to Allison while she was writing that was like, make it mean, make it meaner, make it relentless. Like, because I think her first draft had a lot more jokes in it. And I was like, don't make it too clever. Like it's gotta just be like, but in the original script, there was no description of what the visuals were going to look like. Like, I think we were imagining it would just be like, he's just sitting there and we're hearing all these things and maybe like his eye is twitching or something. And then that was it was Anne Walker Farrell's episode, Lisa, right?
Oh, it was, yeah, that's right. Right? Yes, it was. Yeah.
So she directed that, and she had this idea to do this like really kind of scratchy. She called it like New Deal era, or what did she refer to it?
UPC? Was it UPC style animation?
Something. So some old kind of animation. And I was like,
kind of 60s
I'm familiar
style
with that reference. Yes, I know what you're talking about. But she's like, I think this would really kind of illustrate the freneticness of the. And actually, before it got to Anne, we recorded it with Will, and Will, really like got what it was going for and got that kind of like kind of energy to it. And so I think Anne listening to that soundtrack really kind of visualized what does that look like, right? So if it was just like me writing a thing by myself, I wouldn't have come up with any of that stuff. So it really was nice that like and I like to think we fostered an atmosphere where animators could pitch stuff or like, hey, what if we tried this or what if we tried that? And so it's a great example of it all coming together in a very cool way.
That song is such a big part of that episode too. That
it's true. Song, and that was I think Noel found that. Yeah, our executive producer Noel Bright came in with the song. He's like, I think this would really help, and it did.
It's one of my favorite episodes. I love it.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite episodes too. And this next question comes from Curtis Wong, and he wanted to ask specifically about Diane. What prompted the narrative focus on Diane's identity as an Asian American woman and the trauma that can be seen from the intersection of that identity? Like, what sort of prompted that exploration?
It felt like it was overdue. I mean, it felt like we weren't being honest about that part of her character, and we were avoiding it. And I think partly we were avoiding it because at the beginning of the show, I really wanted to work hard not to define her solely by her race or make her like the Asian character on the show. And so I really wrote away from that. But the nature of having a long-running TV show is that you want to eventually hit all the stories. You want to like mine this character and understand like, well, why are they doing this or why are they doing that or what else is going on with them? And eventually, like in the 4th season, it started feeling like there's this big part of her that we're ignoring, and we should talk about that because as an Asian American, she would have thoughts about being an Asian American, and that would be part of her story. And so it feels like it's starting to become an elephant in the room that we're not talking about. I think part of it too, it was difficult to think about earlier because I felt like I never had a good handle on what race means in a world with animal people. And I felt very comfortable talking about gender because I felt like gender would not be changed in this world. But I felt like when it comes to being a racial minority, well, what is a minority in this world? I'm not so sure anymore. And would animal people treat people of different races differently, or they all just be humans? I never felt like I had a satisfying answer for that, so I kind of ignored it. And I feel like I wish I had realized earlier that I don't need to know the answer to that to at least use some of these conversations for story or talk about that. Because I think there was really interesting stuff that we kind of left on the table because we didn't know how it would apply. And I think sometimes you don't have to know. You can dive in and explore and see what happens.
Great. I really love that question and the talk around it, because I think even when I'm watching, I'm thinking, yeah, how does race play into this, especially with, the animals? So we're gonna have one final question. It's actually gonna be from a super fan, and they're gonna be able to say it aloud. So I won't be asking it. So I'm gonna bring them on. Their name is Madison. So I guess give it a little bit of time for them to come on and ask their question.
Hi, Madison.
A super fan.
Super
Hello. Such a pleasure to meet you virtually over Zoom. Thank you so much. So my question is, one of the questions that fans had throughout the show, especially everything that happened with Penny, Sarah Lynn, and Gina, is can BoJack redeem himself? And if so, how? Or is that a question that we should even be asking? So I'm curious about how you and the other creators handled this, because I feel like it really is delicate, especially with the Me Too movement and cancel culture.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. Lisa, do you have any thoughts you want to get in?
I'll let you. I'll let you take that one.
Well, I am very much interested in questions about redemption and forgiveness. And I do underline the word questions because I don't think that I have the answers. And I didn't want the show to present these are the answers, you're welcome. This is how everybody should think. I think it's, and that's kind of how I feel about a lot of things, actually. Like, I think it's good to grapple with stuff. And sometimes it's self-defeating to go, we have to find the answer for this and then say, I've solved it, it's this. And so I think a lot of the best stuff on BoJack came from like conversations in the writer's room or conversations that we felt people were having. It's like, let's put it up there, let's have this conversation. And even if we don't necessarily know the answer. I mean, I think redemption is a tricky thing because when you say like, who deserves redemption? Or who is owed forgiveness. And the truth is like nobody owes anybody anything. Like no one deserves anything, right? Like we're all making choices every day about who we want to let in our lives on a personal level and on a public level, their art. And I also think, one of the things we tried to do on BoJack, and one of the conversations that was interesting to me was that separation of like, can you be forgiven by the people in your life that you have wronged? And can you be forgiven on the public stage? Those are two very different questions. And the answer to one is not necessarily the same as the answer to the other, right? And so I personally like to believe in personal redemption. And I like to believe that nobody is lost and that there is a way back for you as a person, maybe not even to the ones you've wronged, if you've wronged them so terribly that you just need to stay out of their lives, but that there is a way to be better and there is a way to improve and that you shouldn't give up. But I don't think that necessarily scales to like celebrities deserve to be forgiven and everyone goes to see their movies because they said they're sorry. And so that was something, we tried to thread a little bit on the show, but ultimately these are sticky questions and there is no correct answer. And so you can feel good about whatever answer you've come up with for yourself, I guess is my point, is you decide what you want to forgive and what you are willing to look beyond and who you feel like is doing the work for you, again, both personally and on a public way. And don't let anyone tell you you are wrong, because we're all just humans trying to figure this out.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the answer.
I just want to say that I appreciate both of you for being here and answering all of these questions. So many people in the chat have just been so excited. And so I think what we'll do now is, I guess we'll give it back to Shalori.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all so much. It was an amazing talk. We're actually going to wrap up, but I want to share one thing with everyone before everybody goes. Okay. So I know folks had started to ask, where can you find the recording? The recording will be on the UCLA First Year Experience Office's YouTube channel. So go ahead over to our YouTube channel and we will post it there next week. And then if you have more questions about the Common Experience program overall, you can go to tinyurl.com/FYE-CE-21. And then if you need resources related to self-care, mental health and well-being, or just general campus updates, kind of like that warm hug from us to you, we have a digital care package that we release once or twice a quarter for all of our students and the community. So it's tinyurl.com/UCLA-DCP. And thank you again, y'all, for your time. And we appreciate you and have a good weekend.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for watching. Hope you're all doing all right out there.